to the January 6th meeting of the Portland City Council. Would you please call the roll?
Fritz.
Here.
Fish.
Here.
Saltzman.
Here.
Novick.
Here.
Hales.
Here. Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. Our first order of business before we begin the council calendar is to elect a new council president, because we do that every 6 months. I believe a motion to elect Commissioner Fish to that role is in order.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Fritz.
Very sad to be giving up the enormous power of being president of the council. Aye.
Fish.
I'm humbled by this vote of confidence. Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Novick.
Commissioner, serve well. I'm sure that you will. Aye.
Hales.
Aye, thank you. All right, congratulations, Commissioner Fish.
Thank you very much.
And we'll move on to the council calendar. Welcome those who are here to speak. Looks like we don't have a large audience today, so we shouldn't have trouble accommodating people who wish to speak. If you're here to testify on a council item, please sign up or let the clerk know when we get to that item if you're interested in speaking on it. We typically allow 3 minutes for people to speak, and there shouldn't be any difficulty accommodating that today. We exercise the courtesies of good discourse in this room, so if you agree with someone who wants to, if you agree with someone who's speaking, you want to indicate that, feel free to give them a thumbs up or a wave of the hand, and if you disagree with them, you're welcome to give them a thumbs down or some other polite gesture, but we ask that we not make vocal demonstrations or applause in favor or against our fellow citizens' points of view in this room, so everyone can be heard. We make exceptions for students and visitors when they're here, but in general, we try to let everyone have their say in a quiet and orderly way in this room. We appreciate your help with that. We have some council communications where citizens have signed up for time to speak on topics of their choosing. We'll take that first, and then we have the rest of the council business in front of us. We have a consent calendar, and I don't believe I've had any requests to move things off of consent and to regular calendar, right? None? Okay. Let's move ahead then, please, with communications item number 1.
Request of Craig Rogers to address council regarding Too Big to Fail.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, council.
Get to be number 1 this year. That's a high privilege.
Really, the first one. Got a real toss salad here. Good morning, council. My name is Craig Rogers. And Commissioner Steve Novick, you always make me happy when I drive down the road. And recently I was in East Portland on Halsey. There's one I hadn't seen, the Winky Blinky crosswalk that catches people's attention. And again, you're in the business of saving lives, and I'd like to thank you and your PBOT team. So, Too Big to Fail, where does that come from? That comes from the original street fee. As I'd say, no vote, no oversight, no sunset. The cornerstone is styrofoam, and it could be raised at any time, spin on anything, and go on forever. Okay? And it was important for me to see that stop. It was in a hurry. It's like you see people do shell games and they move those walnuts around real fast. You can't keep track. Everybody has their gifts. Perhaps maybe it's semantics with words or something. And we need to slow things down. Pay attention to detail of just what those words are that are contained within these important things that happen down here. And I'm looking at the City Club here, and they say for nearly 30 years, Portland has tried and failed. Well, quite frankly, it's my understanding that the money was always there, but it went to shiny things, as outlined here in this Oregonian article, The Politics of Potholes. So I think we need to pay attention to where the money goes when the money's already there. And deferring maintenance is fiscally irresponsible. Well, what's fiscally irresponsible is spending it on shiny things other than the maintenance. So I think we really need to slow things down. Again, this report, it's about hurry, 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 and I agree. We do need it now. It's kind of like when somebody said, when should you have planted a tree? And somebody says 20 years ago. So we need this, but it needs to be done properly. It needs to be done. It takes 2 wings to fly. And down here, it's kind of like you've been flying on 1 wing. We need the other wing, fiscal responsibility. If you're flying on 1 wing, you go in circles and you crash. I don't see the fiscal responsibility. When I communicate to people, I say, we stock the shelves to give away the store. They're like those ducks with a glass of water in front that are going down like that. Everybody agrees. We stock the shelves to give away the store. We stock the shelves to give away the store. So here we have member council saying confidence true fee will pass. Details not important. They are important. The devil's in the details. That if you want to do something evil, you put it in something boring. So I think we need to pay attention to what's going on here. Things hinge on one word. The reason why that Paris Agreement is so weak, because of one word. And it was the United States that went in there to weaken that thing with one word, where should implies maybe, shall is legal. Well, shall was dropped because other countries that couldn't afford it or whatever wanted the weaker one, and it was the United States that discovered that. Thank you for your time. Apparently, I still got 22 minutes. Hey,
No, actually, you're over.
Oh, okay.
You're over, Craig. Thank
or
you very
22,
much.
20.
Thank
I
you.
tried to talk fast, but that's it.
You
We're
got a lot
paying
in. Thank
attention to
you.
what happens here.
Good to hear from you. Thank you. Okay, item number 2.
Request of Crystal Alinsky to address council regarding police misconduct.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Nick Fish, Dan Saltzman, Charlie Hales, Amanda Fritz, and Steve Novick. My name is Crystal Elinsky, and Craig, that was well said. Last time I meant to speak here was about a very similar topic, and so even though police misconduct is related, I will refer to that a bit. Essentially, so today I'm Crystal Elinsky, representing myself and looking at the dismal circumstances that we find ourselves in. Bureau of Transportation is especially on its feet. Parks. We need to send our representatives thousands of miles away with fossil fuels to go and learn how to be like a white man, or get a lecture from the Pope on what we can do for global warming. And I did notice that about the Paris climate talks, especially the fact that ISIS came up very often and everyone thought it would. But when we're having a global war, that's the worst thing we can do to planet Earth, Pachamama. It's such a waste for us to be sending our representatives and our people over thousands of miles to have a conference, something they could have in a conference call when nothing really gets done here at home. As I try to get here, with the circumstances we live under, the vast majority of people in this city are living in horrible conditions, horrible. To even get down here to City Hall is a feat in and of itself, not just because of snowpocalypse or the sinkhole that closes off our street, and the older people and the people that are disabled that move there because they're right next to a bus. It's like 6 months they're going to be without it. And as you go down along these bus lines and these tracks, and you see people who just don't care anymore throwing their Starbucks coffee cups and their cigarette butts into the MAX train tracks, and even the signs on the MAX are just crumbling away. It just looks like some sort of, our city just looks really, I don't know what kind of a bubble that you 5 live in, but when I come here, I hear a lot of this, let's thank ourselves for being such a great green city and whatnot. And we're going downhill fast. We could have foreseen this influx. We could have foreseen problems with ISIS. I was sitting on the bus with a 14-year-old a while back, and we look out, it's coming along the number 16, and we look out at the train tracks. He said, "This is why I want to leave this country." It was going on for a few miles of war machines being sent to Syria. The day that I got dragged out of City Hall and tortured underneath the federal building across the street, I was going to talk about Syria. Why are we involved with Syria? Why are we sending our war machines? Why are we allowing fossil fuels to go through our city? Yes, I congratulate you for standing up on that, but I want to see some results. I want to stop these war planes flying over us all the time. It's disgusting. It costs $1,000 a minute
Thank you,
to
Crystal.
fly an F-16 over. There goes my month's wages. There's my year's wages.
Thanks, Crystal. You take care.
And police,
Okay.
my God, don't even get me started.
Okay, thank you. Item number 3.
Request of Ken Thrasher to address council regarding College Possible.
Come on up. Good morning. Just pull that microphone back down into range there, if you would.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you very much. Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm Ken Thrasher, Chair of the Board of College Possible, and today with me, Paige Hill's here to kind of personalize what we do as one of our great team members. Happy New Year, and I want to first thank you for all the investments you've made in key quality education initiatives each year, putting about $500,000 in those key initiatives annually. And I think this year's a great opportunity to invest, I think, in College Possible. There's a number of reasons why. As we think about the City of Opportunity and some of your key strategies, we currently serve 400 low-income, first-generation diverse students, 75% diverse, 400 kids in college, 130 are in our first graduating class, and we serve about 1,000 9th and 10th graders with college awareness courses. And when you look at the work we're doing in getting these kids to go to college and graduate from four-year colleges, our report card is exceptional. We had a 25% increase in ACT scores last year. Of the students that graduated, 95% were accepted into college, and 90% of those accepted went immediately to college, and we're working on the rest to get there. We're going to mentor these kids for up to 6 years while they're in college, and they will graduate from college at a 10-to-1 ratio versus their peers that don't go through College Possible. So we really are making a difference. And I think as you look at the opportunity for the city and the 5 key priorities, opportunity, using AmeriCorps, we set high expectations for our students, not low expectations. Equity, we're serving primarily the kids that you want to have served from diverse populations and low-income families. Geography, we're serving the most difficult area of the cities in the 6 high schools and 5 school districts we serve today. Immigrants, we're serving a number of immigrants and second language learners and families and helping them integrate into this community. And leverage, we're leveraging your investment in a number of ways in a public-private partnership, but also allowing us to address issues like housing and homelessness with kids that may end up in that place if we don't break the cycle of poverty. And we know that for every kid we can keep out of poverty over 5 generations, roughly 200 of their descendants will also be affected. So the leverage we're creating is tremendous. And so I wanted Paige maybe just to give you just a brief feeling about what it's like to be a student and what we do for them. So I'll yield my remaining seconds to her.
Well, my name is Paige Hill. I've been with College Possible for 4 years, and in that time I've been really lucky to be part of hundreds of what we call ripples, which is when we work with one student, we set forth a ripple of hope that impacts a lot of other people besides just that student. And one of my favorite ripples is my student Quentin. Quentin, I worked with him 2 years ago, and he rolled into session a little bit late because he was at wrestling practice. And I was working with another student, so I gave him something to do while I caught up with another student. And I gave him a list of scholarships for high school juniors. And I said, just pick 3 that you want to apply for. I'll come talk with you in a second. So he got to work. He was quiet for a little bit, and then he piped up, and I wrote it down, what he said 2 years ago. And he said, when I have kids, I'm going to make them do this. I'm going to find scholarships for kindergartners and just do that for every year that they're in school. Quentin's now a college freshman, and we're definitely still in touch, and I know that he's going to invite me to his graduation in a few years, but I'm even more excited to go to his kids' college graduation when they become graduates, just like their dad. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Good to hear from you. Appreciate it. Okay, let's take item number 4, please.
Request of David Keefe Davis to address council regarding homeless state of emergency.
Morning.
So, I'm here representing Multnomah County Cop Watch and also Fight the Sweeps. I see a lot of these sweeps still going on, and I think a lot of it is because of you still have city contracts with Clean and Safe and Pacific Patrol and all these other different groups like Positive Action Cleaning and all this other stuff, and I think that's conflicting with the homeless state of emergency. So I don't know how you guys are going to handle this, but you need to, cancel your contracts or alter them, and so homeless people aren't getting swept through these old existing contracts. And also, everyone's all patting you guys on the back for letting one more city-sanctioned homeless camp stay at Hazelnut Grove, which is, only has a capacity of 40 people. That's hardly worth a big amount of praise if that's all you've done in the last, years of your office when you've basically overpriced the city for a lot of people. And, so it's hardly making a dent. And I hope you'll start opening at least 5 or 10 more city-sanctioned homeless camps and actually really make a dent instead of a minor league little dent, And also, the Hazelnut Grove situation, I saw it actually expands city land and you guys get ODOT land, and then it expands your police powers to evict the homeless campers that aren't on the Hazelnut Grove turf. And basically, the Hazelnut Grove camp is already on city land, so I kind of see it as an illegal ODOT land grab to expand police powers. And there's a lot of different things you could do to actually change the situation with homelessness. There's a thing called hot teams in other cities where they send out homeless outreach teams with various agencies when they go out with the police and have contact with homeless people, and they offer them services and other stuff. And by people constantly being swept around, it really makes it hard for service agencies to actually go provide services to the homeless people when they can't even find the people they're trying to service, And there's another thing also, if you guys are going to have the police do a lot of outreach and contact with homeless people all the time, you might want to train them too in actually knowing how to navigate the social services of our city, because they give out these little green pamphlets that have about 9 addresses on it, and that's about all they do. And,
Thanks, good suggestion, thank you.
if you actually get some people to train them, so they actually know the various services and how, because, Cascadia is good for mental health. Join's good for people that have jobs. Clean and Safe's good for, Central City Concern, they're good for people that have drug addictions that are willing to jump through the hoops. And, the police don't really know much of that stuff.
David, good suggestion, thank you
And they
very
need to
much.
know,
You need to close now.
They need to know, details so they can actually be
Okay, good, thank you very much. Okay, item number 5.
Request of Irene LeBeau to address council regarding humane solutions to being houseless.
Hello, you here? All right, we'll give her another opportunity. Let's move on then to item number 6. Oh, sorry, consent calendar. Did it again. New year. We gotta make the mistake once a year at least. If I can keep it down to once a year, that'd be great. No requests to take things off the consent calendar. Roll call on the consent calendar, please.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Novick?
Aye.
Hales?
Aye. Okay. And now we'll move to time certain item number 6.
Recognize the important role of text messaging in providing excellent and inclusive 911 service and support the Bureau of Emergency Communications efforts to work with the State of Oregon to implement text to 911 in Portland and Multnomah County.
Commissioner Novick.
Colleagues, I'm pleased to bring you to today a resolution stating council support for the Bureau of Emergency Communications efforts to implement text to 911 here in Portland and throughout our region. Text to 911 is just what it sounds like. It allows people to text 911 during an emergency and receive police, medical, or fire help. Texting 911 is incredibly important for people in certain situations. The most obvious one is people who are hearing impaired, but it's also important for people who are in a situation where if somebody heard them speaking and asking for help, it would increase the danger to them. This could include people facing domestic violence or people who simply think that there's a burglar in their house and don't want the burglar to hear them calling 911. Any of us could find ourselves in a situation where making a voice call to 911 could put us in greater danger. Text to 911 makes it easy to access help when it isn't possible to call. The federal government signed off on allowing public safety access points in the U.S. to move forward with text to 911 a couple of years ago, and jurisdictions have been moving forward with different speeds with this initiative. Here in Portland, the city and the rest of our metropolitan region are leading our state in implementing this innovative technology. I'm very pleased that leadership at BOEC recognized the opportunity to move forward with implementation, even when the state of Oregon, which has been looking at this issue, has decided they need more time to do something statewide. I wanted to bring this resolution to council today to call attention to this important initiative, both within city government and in the public. With that, I'll turn it over to Lisa Turley and Laura Wolf of the Bureau of Emergency Communications for a staff presentation.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Turley, and I am the Director of the Bureau of Emergency Communications. As Commissioner Novick stated, we are here today to introduce you to our Text to 911 project. The goal of my brief remarks is to give you some information about how and why BOEC became engaged in this project. About 10 years ago, the 911 industry began talking seriously about this thing called Next Gen 911. Basically, this describes a total shift of 911 service from analog to digital, equipment, network, devices, allowing text, video, and sensory feeds to access 911 centers. This is a process very similar to the television digital switch mandated by the FCC back in 2009. The State of Oregon 911 Office is the lead agency in providing 911 services to our citizens and was in charge of making this project happen. After several fits and starts by the state about how they would approach this project, and it is a huge project, and with different RFP drafts and approaches over the years, in December 2014, at a statewide 911 managers meeting, our community was advised that the state was regrouping and turning the project over to the Department of Administrative Services to manage. The final anticipated completion date was moved from the original 2016 estimate to something closer to 2020 or further out. At that point, I realized that BOEC, the City of Portland, and Multnomah County could not wait that long to ensure that all of the members of our community were able to access our services. Additional urgency for this project was added when the state of Washington announced that they would roll out support for Text to 911 statewide during 2015 and 2016. Having jurisdictions right across the river, and especially with our fluid border, it became very apparent that we needed to take action pretty quickly. Although I knew that we could not provide the infrastructure to support all of the functionality of Next Gen, the option for Text to 911 was there, and actually quite doable and affordable. We began reaching out to our partners in the Portland Dispatch Center Consortium to see which other 911 centers were interested in moving forward with us. And fortunately, everyone in our group, plus some other centers, committed to our project. Laura Wolf, BOEC's external liaison, is here to give you more information about that work effort.
Good morning, Mayor Hales, Commissioners. I'm Laura Wolf with the City of Portland 911 Center. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge Leslie Taylor, who was not able to be with us today. She's the director of Lake Oswego 911 and has taken the project lead on this. Along with BOEC, the PDCC, the Portland Dispatch Center Consortium, is comprised of representatives from the 911 centers in Columbia County, Clark County, Clackamas County, Lake Oswego, and Washington County. In addition to the PDCC partners, Astoria 911 and Woodburn 911 are joining us in this effort. The PDCC determined as a group the need to be on the same system, one which will allow us to seamlessly transfer call data from one 911 center to another. This is especially critical when the caller is moving from one jurisdiction to another. After reviewing different vendor products, we selected a company which will allow us to do that. Acting on behalf of the PDCC, Washington County 911's Purchasing and Legal Counsel, they're coordinating the procurement and contract process with the vendor. Once that has been completed, the State of Oregon 911 program will reimburse us for that money. It'll be through the PDCC. The system is web-based, which requires very little technical work to install. However, we want to ensure that we are prepared both internally and externally with staff training, policies and procedures, and public education. We anticipate that the Text to 911 will be operational within the next 6 months. However, we will do a soft launch first to iron out anything before we publicize its availability to the public. We have a subcommittee working together to put a good public education campaign together, and our primary message will be call when you can, text when you can't. I'll be happy to answer you any questions, and thank you for your support.
Thank you. Questions?
Oh, who is the vendor for the product?
Commissioner Fritz, it's TCS. We looked at several of them. There are not very many in the business that do this type of off-the-shelf, but we went through a lot of processes.
And how does it interact with our Versaterm dispatch system?
it'll be fine. If we make sure that it'll interact with every CAD system there. It can take the call of data and transfer it into the CAD system.
Terrific. And how much is it going to cost?
For the city of Portland for a year, it's $15,000 or less. It's not very much.
And that's getting reimbursed by the state as well, right?
Yes, there will be no outlay from the city of Portland. So
That's
it's a
fantastic.
pretty insignificant cost in what it can do for the community.
Thank you for your work.
So the call, the text call comes in and goes into the queue along with the voice calls.
Correct.
It's just the computer system will put that in train with all the other calls that are coming in.
Correct. It'll present itself in a different web browser, but it'll be there on a call taker screen when they log in. It'll log into that system as well.
Oh, so they're actually, the call takers have to sort of be watching two streams of incoming calls as opposed to one?
The 911 phone call drops into their ear.
Yeah.
So that is an auditory cue, whereas this will be a visual cue. But yes, they will be accessing two different feeds.
It's not like they only have one screen in front of them, I get that.
They have like 7.
About 10, but, okay. They're already pretty good at multitasking, I understand.
Right, it'll be a
Yes.
small window on one of those screens they already have.
Yeah, okay.
Is there capacity in the system for the texting back to be done by dictation rather than typing it in?
I don't know the answer.
Not yet, maybe.
I think not yet. I don't know that answer, but I think the intent is to be able to type back. We have, for the hearing impaired and deaf, we have a TTY that comes up, and so it's the same principle as just being able to type back and forth.
And might this
Now.
increase the opportunities for employment for people with hearing disabilities that we might, if it starts to catch on and a lot more people start using text rather than voice, might potentially be possible to employ more people at the 911 center to manage that system?
Depending on the number of calls we receive on this, we might be able to have one position designated to do just the texting application.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question. With the texting capacity, will people be able to, if they want, attach a photograph to the text and send that in?
That is not yet. That is part of the Next Gen package. This is merely text. But Next Gen does involve where somebody could be photographing or videotaping something, and then it gets sent to the 911.
And I think, I don't, at least I don't know what percentage of your calls that come in are people that just want to put you on notice of something.
Right.
I just saw someone,
Right.
and where a text and a photograph might be all that the person needs to do and doesn't need a return.
Yeah, we look forward to Next Gen 911, and quite frankly, we're very disappointed that it is not coming to fruition at this point, because there is all kinds of clothing can have sensors to it, and so your clothes would be able to notify the center that you're having a heart attack. I mean, there's that kind of functionality, but we have to wait for the infrastructure.
And is this just for 911 or is it for the non-emergency number as well?
It's just for 911.
Discussion, other questions? Thank you both very much. I know you have some
Thank you so
panels
much.
that you want to call, Commissioner.
Yes, Mayor, we have 2 panels of invited testimony. I'd like to start by asking Levon Hester and Terry Blosser from the Portland Commission on Disability to come up to testify.
Two people with visual limitations trying to navigate.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm just going to go ahead and start us off. My name is Levon Hester. I'm the chair of the Portland Commission on Disability. I know you all know that, but they may not. I'd like to bring you greetings from the commission. We feel very passionately about this. We think it will have an impact on our community, but it also has a broader impact, and Terry will talk more about that. We were so excited that we even have someone who's going to be from our commission who will be providing testimony during the public testimony, so thank you, Sue. For us, there's an importance of people with disabilities are oftentimes left out, or their things are taken up when it can be a big win and everyone can feel sorry for and like they've done something great for those poor people, those poor victims. And one of the things that has happened here is that with the Commission on Disability and with the work that we're doing with you, City Council, over the years, we have been really changing to be having great treatment of with dignity of people with disabilities. So coming in, asking our opinion about this, asking us to voice what's important here is very important, because we will be impacted. Our community will be impacted. I remember going to Mexico a couple of years ago with a friend, and she wandered off because this is what she does. But I remember being really freaked out because the only Spanish I know is from my childhood, and it's the commands, cállate la boca, things like that from my mother. And so I was like, how do I contact the police if I don't find her in a couple of hours? And this is what people oftentimes live with every day when someone has maybe cerebral palsy, and so they speak in a way that's not clear. When someone is deaf and things like that. And so what you are doing by being a city that listens, and really what Lisa was saying about we couldn't wait. This is important. This is what the city of Portland is great at, and what I'm so proud to be on the Commission on Disability, but also just to be a citizen of the city, is because you're listening and you're saying, we can't wait. We can't continue to do things the way they've been done just because they're being done that way, but we have to move forward. We have to bring access into the forefront. We have to do it whether it's easy or not. Obviously, it hasn't been easy for the state, and it's not going to be easy here, but you're saying, okay, let's pare it down a little bit, and let's take the first step, because we can't wait. And I just want to thank you very much for that, and say how important it is for us on the commission that you continue to make those movements and say, we can't wait. You are important. Your access to basic services means something to us.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. Nice
Good.
to have you here this morning.
Good, thank you. And this is Bryson. So anyhow, I just thought I'd introduce Bryson to you guys. He also had an opportunity at one point to visit the U.S. Senate chambers, and he laid down at Senator Harry Reid's desk and made a nice little mess there, rubbing his hair all over the place. So we thought that was kind of funny. So, anyhow, so I just thought.
So he's a Democrat then?
Actually, it was interesting because we went there as part of a Washington experience when I was going through the Executive Master of the Public Administration program at the Hatfield School of Government. So we went there and met Mike Kennedy, who was Senator Hatfield's Chief of Staff. So it was really interesting. It was a real good experience for all of us, including Bryson. So anyhow, good morning, City Commissioners and Mayor Hale. My name is Terry Blosser. I represent the Portland Commission on Disability in this matter. Being that I am legally blind and legally deaf, I identify as deafblind and feel that through lived experience, I can testify on the Text to 911 legislation. Who would benefit from such a service? And what we've already heard before is that the deaf, the hard of hearing, those with speech impediments, and interesting enough, as you heard before, even hearing people who are required or are in a situation where it requires complete silence and they're unable to voice their concerns or call. Situations like domestic violence cases, or somebody else mentioned the break-ins and things like that. As it stands right now, the current 911 system has barriers which affects people who are deaf, hard of hearing, or have a speech impediment. In an emergency situation, they're presently required to enlist another or to have tools immediately available to them to communicate, such as a T2Y, which some of you may be aware. It looks like a little computer keyboard and you put your phone on top of it to be able to communicate. In an emergency situation, it's not always going to be available to an individual to be able to communicate. And as we know, that this situation is not always doable or workable. Having the text to 911 implemented will remediate this significant barrier, and more importantly, it'll provide what we call universal access to all people. Other cities also have implemented such a program, such as Austin, Texas. They plan to have theirs operational by June of this year. San Antonio, Dallas, Arlington, Texas, Houston, they all have it implemented. Boulder County in Colorado has even posted a informational video on YouTube about their 911 text to 911 system. Some of the success stories regarding the text to 911, in Los Angeles, there was a story reported in December last year about a deaf lady who was experiencing symptoms of a stroke. She was able to text to 911 and an ambulance was there within minutes. And she got to the hospital and they were able to take care of her. And she was quoted in the news article as saying, she said here, if you don't have anyone to call for you and you have a cell phone, this will actually save your life. In closing, providing universal access to all has its benefits. As you heard, it is not only provides a way for people with disabilities who are deaf, hard of hearing, or those with speech impediments, but also it helps another segment of our society, people who are hearing and people who are victims of domestic violence and individuals who are unable to communicate via phone. We all benefit from having universal access. And let's do the right thing and fund this project and get it implemented as soon as we can. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you. Thank you both. Any questions for our commission members? Thanks very much. We appreciate your involvement with us.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I think you have another panel, Commissioner.
We have one more panel. We have Donna Nicklin from the Oregon Association of the Deaf and Mark Hill of the Cerebral Palsy and Deaf Organization.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner and Mayor Hales. My name is Mark Hill, and I'm the president of the Cerebral Palsy and Deaf Organization, CPADO. I'm also a resident here in Portland, Oregon. That's better. CPADO fully supports the resolution on the implementation of the text to 911 system in the Metro Portland area. CPADO is one of the members of the consumer group at the national level, such as the National Association of the Deaf, NAD, the Hearing Loss Association of America, HLAA, the Telecommunications for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Incorporated, TDI, and many other national organizations of and for the deaf. We have been working with the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, and the Department of Justice on the implementation of text to 911 in the country. We acknowledge that the timing of the implementation requires us to update the 911 system. I commend the Portland Metropolitan 911 Center to take action. Only a few who have text to 911 systems in America before the full actions. Sharing a discussion at the consumer group that we had with the city commission, I don't recall if this was a true story. But I can tell you a story that may impact our lives. It was about a break-in incident at a home. A woman heard someone breaking in and ran to a closet. She couldn't speak because she had to be quiet. And fortunately, she had a smartphone. She couldn't call via voice and feared that a thief may hear her voice. So she texted to a 911 center through SMS and stayed calm until police arrived. It shows how useful. Oh, I want to add something. So the text to 911, sorry, 1 second for the interpreter. Oh, the use of TTYs have been radically reduced. Go ahead. Go ahead. Okay. I was trying to say that the use of TTYs have been really reduced because more and more people are now using smartphones. And they also use video phones. Also, video relay, and that's called VRS, which means that I call someone using my video phone and that dispatches to a sign language interpreter. And the interpreter speaks for me while I'm signing. So, in the future, we'll be changing over to RVT. Real-time text, or RTT. So that's what we're going to be doing in the future. I don't know if that's going to have access for everyone, but anyway. The text to 911 is a great tool in any type of disaster where no phone is available for the deaf people to call. Your Honor, the Cerebral Palsy and Deaf Organization encourages the 911 Center to take time to work with people with disabilities who may type the message slowly. Once again, CPADO supports the resolution. Please vote in favor of the resolution for the sake of our citizens' safety. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners and Mayor. My name is Pauna. Last name is Nicklin. I'm here also as a board of director with Oregon Association of the Deaf, OAD. And I live in Salem, Oregon, and I want to share my testimony on OAD and also on the support of text to 911 for the emergency services. OAD expresses the full support of text to 911 for the emergency services. We understand that the support includes, or we support what you guys are doing with this and for the resolution of the issues at stake. I wanted to share with you all my personal experience with 911. I had a bad situation happen several years ago. I needed to call 911 and I wasn't able to because I couldn't do it at the time using video relay. That's where I see the interpreter on the screen, so that's how I called 911, but I wasn't able to. And I wish that I had had a text to 911 at the time because I wasn't able to reach my video phone. So fortunately for me, I was okay and I escaped from the situation. But I just know there's other people out there who are experiencing this kind of thing. It's a terrible situation where you're not able to call. So some deaf people can text and some can't. It kind of depends on what their situation is. But it's beneficial for all community members, hearing and deaf. You never know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going on in their lives personally. So for example, we feel that text to 911 services will provide a quick response, direct access, with direct communication back and forth instead of going through an interpreter on the video phone, which takes time to dispatch the call. Every second counts in that situation to save a life. What Mark said about most of us using the phone a lot more now than TTYs. Well, we're trying to remove the barriers to communication and provide more access. We want to see that improve in the future. That's our goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you all. Great testimony. Thank you all. Okay, and you have no other panels to call. We should see if there's public testimony, correct?
Exactly.
Okay. Thanks very much. And we'll see, Carl, do you have a sign-up sheet or anyone would like to come up and speak on this resolution?
I have 3 people signed up. I have Suzanne Stahl, Charles Johnson, and Crystal Ilinsky.
Good morning. Good morning. There you go.
Good morning, Commissioners. Lydia's asked me to begin. My name is Charles Johnson, for the record, And I want to remind, I think this is a very auspicious way. This is the best city council meeting in a long time. And I hope that for the rest of the year, we will continue to, all of us, citizens and commissioners, work hard to have this level of inclusion and even greater diversity here. And it's always great to see Levon Hester and other people from the Portland Disability Commission. I'm going to presume they're still meeting this afternoon on the 5th floor of the Commonwealth Building. And although I usually go there for the Human Rights Commission, I think I'll make it a goal to better engage with other segments of the community and realize that we're talking about really different abilities here and making sure that everyone is treated fairly, that we have a system that's ideal, as we've seen, for people with cerebral palsy. The gentleman who testified for that organization mentioned that sometimes they may text more slowly, and I hope that the emergency communications people, part of their standard protocol is that when they get this information, they'll dispatch personnel. I'm partial to the fire department over the police department, but any personnel, as soon as they get that identifying information, so that help can be en route as the clearing and frying information comes in. But primarily, I want to just congratulate you for picking up the ball that the state government has dropped and putting us in a race with the state of Washington to see if we can have full and better text to 911 service before they have it across the river. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Suzanne. How are you?
Good morning. My name is Suzanne Stahl. I'm the co-chair of the vice chair, of the Portland Commission on Disability. And today I would like to read a testimony from a friend of mine, Stephen Brown, who is the chair of the legislation committee for the Oregon Association of the Deaf. And this letter was not only signed by him, but it was signed by Chad Ludwig, who is the OAD president. Hello, my name is Stephen M. Brown. I am here as chair of legislation committee for the Oregon Association of the Deaf, as well as a Portland resident, to share my testimony and to support the Text to 911 Emergency Messaging Initiative. The OAD trusts that the City Council understands the importance of this initiative to removing barriers for participation for Portlanders with disabilities. In its furtherance, we also enrich the Office of Equity and Human Rights mission to promote equity for all Portlanders to enjoy and participate in public facilities, programs, services, or activities. We look forward to continuing to work with the council and others as this initiative moves forward. At the Portland Commission on Disability meeting in November 2015, the commissioners heard from the Bureau of Emergency Management representative concerning a limited equal access to call 911 in the event of an emergency. The Bureau wants to see a new Portland City ordinance that requires text to 911 emergency messaging be directly accessible and provide equal access. The OAD feels that this initiative is not only an accommodation issue, which makes it a paramount under Title II of the ADA, but it's also a public safety issue. In addition to the benefits this will provide to the deaf, deaf-blind, deaf-plus, and hard of hearing, this proposed ordinance will benefit our community by addressing directly equal access issues such as public safety issues due to limit of direct equal access landline phone system, conveyance of important information, an easier and quick method of texting. Texting can be useful in emergency events where immediate help is needed. Increased usage of smartphones in recent years over the actual uses of landline phones. The number of telephones usage is declining due to rapidly changing emerging communication technology. deaf, deafblind, hard of hearing, and speech disabled individuals are following those trends. ADA Title II includes a provision which I quote, where a public entity communicates by telephone with applicants and beneficiaries, text telephones, or equally effective communication systems shall be used to communicate with individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing or have speech impairments. All the aforementioned situations would be avoidable if texting is available anytime and anywhere. This proposed ordinance requiring text to 911 emergency messaging will be in compliance with ADA Title II best practices. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you both. Any others that are here
Ms.
to speak?
Heister is going to clarify some information for us.
Oh, okay. Please, come on up.
I just wanted to let you know that Mr. Johnson just said Wednesday today is our meeting. It actually has, that was the executive committee meeting, which has moved. That is on Thursday, tomorrow. But more importantly, our full commission meeting will be Friday morning at 11 to 1. So if you would like to come join us, you can still go to the Human Rights Commission meeting.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Okay, anyone else that would like to speak on this item? If not, then let's please take a vote on the resolution.
Fritz?
So for the 4 years that I had the pleasure of being the commissioner in charge of the 911 Bureau, the Bureau of Emergency Communications, one of the first things I learned from Director Lisa Turley was kind of obvious, but when you think about it, people call 911 on the worst day of their lives. And there are many situations where people may need to get in touch with emergency providers where they can't or don't want to call. So I'm very grateful to Lisa Turley, Laura Wolf, the City of Lake Oswego, and our other community partners. It's great that you've been able to pull together a consortium, not only Multnomah County. I very much appreciate that. We've had some success with the text line for Lines for Life, where for several years now, teenagers and others have been able to text in suicidal situations and other incidences where some people just feel more comfortable with texting rather than talking. And so this is another example of the great work of the Commission on Disability, as well as BOEC and its wonderful employees, of recognizing that providing accommodation actually is more inclusive for everybody and has multiple benefits for everybody. I'm very happy to hear that it can be simply plugged into our computer-aided dispatch system that was installed and working well. And I'm also very pleased that we're able to do doing what we can before we can get all the bells and whistles. That's certainly the basic texting, which my 85-year-old mother is extremely good at, is something that's within a lot of people's capabilities. And I appreciate all the work. Commissioner Novick, thank you for getting this done. Aye.
Fish?
Director Turley, Commissioner Novick, congratulations. This is a wonderful way to start the new year. An advance in technology, cost-effective. I look forward to the next evolution where a picture, a photograph can be included. And I will just add that having spent my holiday in Europe visiting my family, one of the barriers I encountered there was the absence of Wi-Fi. And without Wi-Fi, a lot of people can't send or receive data. So I became pretty good at identifying where all the Starbucks were because they had free Wi-Fi. New York City just this week began to roll out a system where they're going to put 6,000 kiosks throughout the city to provide free universal access to Wi-Fi, which I think is something the city is going to have to consider at some point to boost people's access to the system. But this is a really smart, sensible step forward, and congratulations to everyone who made this day possible.
Saltzman?
Well, I know for years I remember having conversations with Lisa over the years about why we can't do this, and I remember there was either the state of Iowa or a community in Iowa was light years ahead of everybody else, and they had set up texting capabilities. So I really appreciate the workaround here that this represents, working around sort of a plotting state as they move ahead. And it's really a great example of technological innovation. I mean, it's just an outstanding example of the benefits of technology, and in this case, for the disabled community in particular. It's a remarkable achievement, and I really appreciate the leadership in getting this done sooner rather than later. Thank you. Aye.
Novick.
It is a great honor to serve as the Commissioner for the Bureau of Emergency Communications and to work with our first responders who work tirelessly every day to serve the citizens of Portland when they are in their greatest need. And as you've seen today, also work tirelessly to improve that service in any way possible. I really, really appreciate the support and the work of Levon and Terry and Donna and Mark and their testimony today underscoring the importance of this move. I'm extremely proud of BOEC leadership and of our regional partners for joining us in this effort. This is going to be a wonderful improvement in service to a large number of people. Look forward to our implementing it. Thank you so much. Aye.
What an excellent piece of work and an excellent hearing. So thank you, Commissioner Novick and Lisa and your team. This is really a move that everyone's going to benefit from. And the hearings, I think, made that clear. I mean, we all carry the one version or another of these devices around in our pockets, and they allow us to communicate in a variety of ways as long as the others in the communications are set up to do so. We can take video, we can record voices, we can even get language translation on these things. So we are all carrying a very powerful computer in our pockets or our purses, and yet we haven't caught up in a lot of what government does. So this is an important move, and I think it's also been really profound today how clear this it is to all of us now, how this will connect all of our citizens to city services much better than we have in the past. So it's a great piece of work. I think it's important to note in passing, I spend a little time on Twitter occasionally talking to our citizens, and once we make this change, you will be able to text to 911, but you still can't request emergency services by tweets. So please call or text, but don't try to get the police bureau or the fire bureau or anyone else to respond by tweeting. So with that caveat, job well done, great move, aye. Thank you. Okay, let's move, please, from this good piece of work to item number 7.
City Club of Portland Street Funding Presentation.
Commissioner Novick.
Colleagues, for nearly 30 years, the City of Portland has known that we are underinvesting in our transportation infrastructure, and the streets have been gradually crumbling. And every year that we delay, the problem gets worse because the longer it takes you wait to fix a street, the more expensive it is to fix it. Streets are kind of like teeth. If you don't do regular brushing, flossing, and cleaning, then you get into root canals and extractions. Now, we are poised, finally, to take action. 3 weeks from now, I will bring to council a proposal to send to the voters a temporary 10-cent per gallon gas tax to fund street repairs and traffic safety. Because another issue we have in the city is there's too many places in the city where it is not safe for children to walk or bike to school or for seniors to walk to bus stops because of dangerous intersections or missing pieces of sidewalk. The City Club of Portland has done a great deal to re-energize the discussion about transportation funding and to set the stage for a successful effort with their research report and recommendations. And I am delighted that the City Club, in the persons, I believe, of Jennifer Rollins, Chair of the Street Funding Research Committee, and Kristen Eberhard, the lead report writer, I'm glad that they are here today to present the report and discuss their research and their findings, their recommendations.
Great. Thank you very much. Jennifer, Kristen, come on up, please. Welcome.
Good morning, Mayor Hales, Commissioners. My name is Jennifer Rollins, and as Commissioner Novick mentioned, I was the chair of City Club of Portland's research committee that looked at the issue of funding for Portland's streets. And we're really just grateful that you're still willing to listen to us and consider our ideas. And I'm going to turn over the substantive portion to Kristen Eberhardt, who is the chief writer of the report and knows the most about it. Kristen?
Thank you. For nearly 30 years, Portland has tried and failed to find the funds it needs to keep roads in good repair. Portland is at the vanguard of becoming a multimodal city, but to maintain that leadership position, we have to find the funds to adequately fund streets. Unfortunately, there's no silver bullet here. Funds from current and future budget surpluses can help. The city gas tax that you have proposed will cover some of the routine maintenance, but those together are still not enough. The city has to implement additional fees, preferably as closely related to street use as possible, to ensure Portland streets serve residents and businesses for decades to come. So our report has more detail, but we just have 4 recommendations for you today. So first, we urge you to place a local gas tax on the May ballot. The City of Portland, or the City Club of Portland, is encouraged that you have taken this initial steps to place the tax on the ballot. We believe that a local gas tax strikes the best balance of efficiency, fairness, and equity of all the options available. The gas tax is a tried and true method for funding streets. 20 other cities have implemented one, and the Oregon Constitution requires that all the money from a gas tax has to be dedicated to roads so the funds are protected. A city gas tax would have a low administrative cost and high compliance rates because we could do what other cities do and have Oregon Department of Transportation collect the gas tax through its existing mechanism and then give it back to us. A gas tax has a strong nexus with street use. For most motorists, the amount they pay is directly related to the amount that they drive. This creates an incentive for more people to get around Portland by walking, biking, and transit, and ride sharing instead of in a vehicle by themselves, which leads to less congestion, less pollution, better health, and fewer injuries from crashes. Additionally, any new revenue mechanism we think needs to seriously consider the impact it will have on those in Portland who are least able to pay. So 2 advocacy organizations we met with, Opal and Oregon Walks, told us that low-income people in Portland are more dependent on walking, biking, and buses compared to higher-income people who are more car-dependent. Nationwide, households with the highest of income spend 4 times as much as lower-income households on gas, meaning that higher-income households would pay more for a gas tax than lower-income households. They would still pay less as a percentage of their income, so a gas tax is not progressive, but it is much less regressive than a flat household fee. So we asked the city to unanimously place a 10-cent local gas tax on the May ballot. Our second recommendation is to look for additional local revenue streams, and we have a few we'd like you to look at. So implementing the gas tax is just part of the solution. Our report concludes that the city can't address street maintenance backlog or implement the important Vision Zero safety improvements that it needs without new revenue sources. So when we were looking at the other options, we asked ourselves 2 questions. First, does the mechanism capture the most revenue from those who drive the most? And second, does the funding place an unethical or inequitable burden on Portlanders who are least able to pay? So based on these considerations, we have 3 recommendations. First, a value and weight-based vehicle registration fee. A vehicle registration fee captures a basic relationship between vehicle use and road use and paying, but the current flat fee that we have is regressive because low-income households pay the same amount as high-income households and heavy trucks are exempted. So we would recommend a more equitable arrangement where you index the vehicle registration fee to the weight and value of the vehicle. So more expensive vehicle owners who have already proved their ability to pay would pay more than low income. Second, we recommend a commuter payroll tax. This is something that Commissioner Novick mentioned to us during our research. It would be a $2 per month payroll tax on non-Portland residents who work in Portland. It has a couple of benefits. First, $2 is pretty low relative to total payrolls. And second, it's would capture money from non-Portland residents who wouldn't be paying other taxes. And finally, because it would be assessed on non-Portland residents, its success at the ballot would be likely. Our final recommendation is parking permits and fees. So right now, the city subsidizes private car ownership by allowing private vehicles to park for free on a public asset. You recently had a report from a stakeholder advisory committee about parking registration fees that told you you could do it on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis so that it would be based on local ability to pay, and it would let neighborhoods choose the street and safety improvements that are most important to their neighborhood. Parking registration permits are a relatively fair means of raising revenue because only owners of vehicles would be charged. So our third recommendation is to commit to spending 50% of future budget surpluses on maintaining infrastructure. So we were happy to see that the council committed 50% of last year's budget surplus to infrastructure maintenance, and we urge you to commit to do the same for future years. Now, we realize that the city has other urgent priorities like the housing crisis, but we think that committing 50% of surpluses to maintenance is important for a couple of reasons. First, it's fiscally prudent. Deferring infrastructure maintenance doesn't just put those costs off to a future year, but it actually increases the cost that you're going to have to pay. So spending money on infrastructure maintenance now rather than later saves money for other priorities like housing, parks, and police. Second, it builds trust. So during our research, we heard from witnesses that voters don't trust that the city is actually prioritizing streets. Now, there's always going to be people who criticize your spending priorities, no matter what they are, but the criticism on or mistrust on this issue seemed to be more widespread, and there were a few reasons that we heard. First, people think that streets are a core city function, so they expect that the city is always spending money on those. So when they learned that the city has actually been putting off prudent maintenance for decades, they were shocked and felt like the city was shirking its duties. And second, when people heard about the street crisis last year, they expected to first see a change in city priorities before the city asked them to reach into their pockets for new fees or taxes. So the feeling seemed to be, if the city isn't digging deep, why should we have to dig? So by dedicating 50% of your budget surplus last year, the City Council sent the message to voters that the city really is taking this seriously, that you are changing your priorities, and that you are putting your money where their mouth is. Making a commitment to do the same for future years would strengthen that signal and build voters' trust that they can vote for a gas tax in May.
But just so you know, the resolution was for 4 years, so we're going to continue doing that for at least this year and the next 2.
Okay, great.
And it's limited to one-time money, not the ongoing money. So it's 50% of the one-time money.
Right.
And it's for maintenance, but not just transportation maintenance, all maintenance, as you know.
Right, infrastructure maintenance we think is important.
Transportation, parks, and emergency management.
So our final recommendation is that Portland needs to engage in Salem. So Salem holds the keys to several of the potential funding sources that we've identified, but in 2015, legislators from the Portland area didn't take a leadership role in promoting the city's needs in the statewide transportation package. So this year, we would urge Portland leaders to talk with your colleagues in the legislature to make sure that in 2017, when the transportation package is back on the table, Portland representatives play a key role. So the League of Oregon Cities could be an important ally in this. In 2015, the League lobbied for many of the things that Portland needs, including a gas tax that's indexed to inflation, so it doesn't keep losing value until the next legislative battle to raise taxes, and local authority to raise local funds. So our recommendation of a value and weight-based vehicle registration fee right now is preempted by state law, so you need the legislature to give you the authority to do that. The League did not argue for a reallocation of highway funds, but that could be a goal for Portland to try and get next year. Cities own about 25% of the roads in Oregon, and cities accommodate the vast majority of the people in Oregon, yet cities get less than 20% of the highway fund. So asking for 25% could be appropriate. So in conclusion, all Portland residents and businesses depend on safe and well-maintained city streets. To keep those safe and well-maintained, we urge you to vote unanimously to place a 10-cent local gas tax on the ballot, to identify additional local revenue streams, to commit to dedicating 50% of future budget surpluses, and to engage in Salem to get the authority that you need for a local vehicle registration fee.
Great. Thank you. Questions?
What led you to believe that the city of Portland didn't engage and that our legislators didn't engage at the legislature last year on the transportation funding issue?
that was something that we heard from witnesses, that there could have been a bigger voice in that transportation discussion.
I personally was down there 9 times advocating for transportation funding, so
We were loud.
yeah. And certainly Speaker Kotek was a leader and several legislators were, so certainly from our perspective, it didn't seem like it was for lack of trying, and it's going to be high on our agenda for this coming
Yeah,
session.
and
as well.
actually, it's always important to remember the history, and of course, the City Club report, you did a good job in your report of explicating that, but we were requested by the governor and the Speaker of the House to take no further action on a local transportation measure during the 2015 session, so they could act on a transportation funding measure. And we obviously acceded to that request and continued to advocate for passage of the state transportation bill. That unfortunately didn't happen. And apparently, based on what I've heard so far from legislative leaders, they're not planning on it happening this year either. So that's pretty disappointing, almost as disappointing as Congress, which has not done anything on this subject for decades. So, we will continue to advocate. Your instruction is heard and accepted. We will continue to advocate that the legislature and the federal government do their part as well. But obviously, having the City Club weigh in as you have is an important civic statement from the community that needs to happen. So we appreciate you raising that.
And thank you for your efforts. I'm sorry I didn't know how loud you were being, but just to reiterate, part of what we would ask you to do is not just ask them to do their part, but to free you up to do
Yes,
your part.
and to not
We have
and
a
to
big
not
list of
preempt
things that we
us.
want them
Yeah.
to start preempting us,
Yeah.
which leads me to my next question about moving away from the flat registration fee. That's county, right? That sets, who has the authority to change that?
So right now the county does. So our recommendation is to ask the legislature to let the city have authority.
Interesting.
Thank you very much. Yeah, the preemptions are a big problem in a number of areas, housing as well. So appreciate you raising that point.
A couple questions. First, I really appreciate the City Club coming in, presenting after they've issued a report. This is the third or fourth time in a number of years where this has happened. Once upon a time, the City Club used to issue reports, but they didn't come to council. So I think this next step is really essential, and thank you for your time and your diligence. I have the abbreviated version of your report, and so I don't have the list of witnesses. How many people actually participated and testified in support of this report?
It's going to take me a second, but I've got the report here.
Okay.
I'll get that for you.
I want to offer just an observation about the word trust. And I appreciate that you made an observation about people don't necessarily, some of the people you heard from don't trust that will spend the money wisely. In 7 years in this job, what I've learned is that increasingly people couch a policy disagreement in terms of trust. Once upon a time, adults would come and say, I disagree with you. Now they say, I don't trust you. And we hear it most loudly, just to give you some feedback, about investing in bicycles, light rail, streetcar, and that's where we're often told we don't trust your spending priorities. So I want to caution about reading into the trust piece more globally, something, because what we increasingly find is a legitimate, good faith policy disagreement couched as a trust issue. And increasingly, I think it's actually toxic to government that every time you have a disagreement, you couch as a trust issue, because what you're doing is kind of getting into a personal kind of dispute, rather than simply saying, I have a disagreement about where you're going to invest your money. But again, the most vocal segment of opposition we hear in transportation funding, in my experience, around bikes and alternatives, is couched as a trust issue. So I think we have to weigh that. I'm not saying we don't deserve to get dinged for spending priorities or for how we've spent money in the past, but I caution reading too much into the trust argument, because it's become a catch-all for just a disagreement. To the extent you've made some very thoughtful recommendations here about alternative funding sources, how important was it in your consideration to balance the administrative overhead of actually collecting the funds as part of your recommendation? Because one of the things we learned in the last debate was, there are some options on the table where the cost of collecting and the compliance issues really outweigh the benefit. So how important was that as a screen for your evaluation of the several options you've come forward with?
Well, so to answer your first easy question, we had 21 witnesses.
Okay, so that's not an insignificant number in a city, but in a city of 600,000, I don't know whether it's representative of the city, but at least 21 people were motivated enough to testify.
And we took administrative costs into consideration. We had in our long 90-page report a decision matrix, and one of the factors was administrative costs, and there were lots of great suggestions that we rejected because we thought compliance would be low or the cost to administer a brand new program that there was no infrastructure for already in place would eat up any new funding. So there were plenty of ideas that we rejected just out of pocket based on that consideration.
With respect to the gas tax, I remember a couple of years ago when we were having this debate and looking at that as an option, there were some ideas the community pitched to us about how to make it less regressive, how you might provide subsidies and how you might administer them through cards or through a credit card type system or a debit card system or something else. Did you consider any of those options in your review of how to limit how to mitigate the inequities of a gas tax by subsidizing directly or indirectly lower income customers?
I don't recall any discussions about subsidizing lower income people with respect to the gas tax. We looked at a lot of ways that we could subsidize the TUF, a flat fee. But I don't think we talked to any witnesses, and we talked a lot about gas tax, about a card program or any of the programs that you're mentioning. Do you recall anything, Kristen?
Yeah, the low-income representatives that we talked to didn't bring up that, but they did emphasize that it would be important that money collected through a gas tax be spent in ways that also benefit people who are not card dependent, so that the impact on them was beneficial, but they didn't talk about a direct way of subsidizing them.
Commissioner, of course, one issue with the gas tax is under the state constitution, it's dedicated to road work. So we couldn't physically take any money from the gas tax and send it as rebates to lower income people. We will be proposing to spend a goodly chunk of the non-paving money in our proposal in areas which are deficient in infrastructure like sidewalks and safe intersections, and those are largely concentrated in the lower income areas of the city.
How you use the money has the effect.
Yeah.
Last question, and it's about vehicle registration fees. In 2004, when I once upon a time was a candidate for unsuccessfully for this job, I actually talked about raising vehicle registration fees. My opponent put it in the voters pamphlet because it polled off the charts as a negative. My opponent later became a very distinguished transportation commissioner in charge, but at the time, the polling apparently indicated that if you tagged me with it, it was not well received east of 82nd Street. Fast forward, we cobbled together a package to fund Selwood Bridge, which would have required Clackamas County to do a modest increase in vehicle registration fee, and I believe that was overturned by referendum. Do we have any sense, empirical evidence, that the public is more willing generally to consider a vehicle registration fee increase for this purpose?
You mean a gas tax?
No, the vehicle registration fee.
Vehicle registration fee, oh, I see, as the next item.
They had other,
Yeah,
I think,
okay.
creative options, but do we have any information that the public is more receptive than they might have been in the past to raising the vehicle registration fee to cover these costs?
So as a committee, we really didn't have the ability to engage any sort of polling, and we did talk to the folks that did polling for the city and some other public polling groups, and we didn't have any specific data like that. What does poll well in this area is tax that someone else pays, of course. And then my sense was that overall ideas that would were progressive. So our hope was that a more progressive form of a registration fee, where someone who has
Based on the value of the car.
has
and
some
the weight.
ability to buy an expensive car, or weight based on use. So someone that has a very heavy vehicle is putting more wear and tear in the street. So we're hopeful, and perhaps that is reflective of some naivete on my part, but my hope was that that would tie into the sense that it was fair and progressive, and that that would appeal to Portland voters.
Maybe we could have a progressive scale and then have a supercharge for anyone driving a Hummer.
Exactly.
Because last night, in my neighborhood, Hummers take up 2 lanes. So I think we would be a super duper charge for that.
And maybe you could drum up support in your neighborhood for that. It might pull well.
Anyway, thank you for your presentation. It's
Other
a
questions?
treat for us to have the City Club
It is.
come and present.
No, we appreciate this tradition, as Commissioner Fish said, of having City Club reports presented here, communicated to us, but also to the larger community this way. Obviously, the City Club does that well itself, and OPB helps, but it's great that we have this tradition, and we're glad you're willing to come here and have this kind of dialogue in public with us and with the community. So,
Well, and thank you for having us today.
other questions?
I just wanted to say, really appreciate the work you put into this. When you released your report, it gave a real shot in the arm to efforts to revisit the issue of finding adequate funding for transportation. Thank you for pointing out that the state currently prohibits us from having any kind of vehicle registration fee. That is definitely something on our agenda. Did want to note that last year, or actually in this budget year, the city is committing more general fund transportation adjusted for inflation than any time since 1985. So I think we've begun overcoming those 30 years of disinvestment, since we did have some one-time money available. And finally, I just wanted to add one more item to your list of possible additional ways to raise revenue from transportation in a fair way, which is studded tires impose inordinate wear and tear on the roads. I've talked with the chairs of each of the counties in the Tri-County area about the possibility of having a sales tax on studded tires, which I think you'd have to have in all 3 counties, otherwise people would just drive across the border to get them, and all of them expressed interest in that. So that's something I could continue to pursue with them as well, and I'd appreciate your support of that. Thank you so much.
I just have one further clarifying question, because I'm not sure that you meant what you wrote in the report on, under the recommendations, number 11. Portland should not saddle all taxpayers with the bill for capital projects that primarily or exclusively benefit a few people and businesses. Bridges primarily benefiting the people driving across the bridge, and streetcar projects primarily benefit the businesses located near the line. If the people and businesses are not willing to pay for the benefits they receive, the city should forego the project rather than siphon money away from things that benefit Portlanders more broadly, such as street maintenance and safety. How does that, I don't understand how that would comport in areas where the neighbors and the businesses can't pay. Like the huge infrastructure maintenance that we need to do on Powell and 122nd and some of the places where there just isn't the capacity of the local folks to pay, even if the rest of us don't necessarily drive those streets very much.
Want to address that? We're not talking about infrastructure maintenance, we're talking about capital projects. So we specifically think that that money should be going to infrastructure maintenance in areas around the city, but not to new projects.
But the problem is that East Portland and Deep Southwest Portland don't have the infrastructure, so they don't get maintenance. They need the capital projects in order to be able to have city standard streets. So I just, did you look at that issue as part of your discussions? That I understand the point about the streetcar, and indeed the businesses along the streetcar and the properties were assessed additionally for those services. But what about the equity of providing services for infrastructure in places that don't have them and can't afford to pay for them?
I guess we're drawing a distinction between infrastructure like paving streets or creating sidewalks that create safety, and new infrastructure projects that only benefit a very specific group of people, like the streetcar.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's an issue that I guess if the City Club is going to continue working on transportation issues, which I bet you will, I would hope that you will help us think about as well, which is if, as he says, he will do, the commissioner brings a proposal to this council to send a gas tax to the voters. We'll have a hearing on that and take action on it. That will fund additional work in maintenance and in safety. However, we still have a giant unfunded liability in transportation, and that the city annexed large areas in the 80s and 90s where the county had permitted homes to be built on cesspools with dirt streets out in front of them. We installed sewers at great expense, those residents and everyone else, to put sewers into the largest unsewered area in the United States. We used to call it Mid-Multnomah County, and now we call it East Portland. And we still have only built a few of the 55 miles of unbuilt streets that we were gifted with when those areas were required to be annexed to the city of Portland by the State Environmental Quality Commission. So we still have this big problem, community problem of unbuilt streets. And it happens that in many parts of that unbuilt network, the residents who live on those streets are well below the average of household income. There are a few places where there are wealthy people living on bad streets, but mostly it's the other way around. It's people with little means to form a local improvement district and pay $20,000, $30,000 a year, $20,000, $30,000 for their share of building the street that never was. So that's a huge problem for Portland. We've put a little bit of money in the general fund budget this year towards that goal, and have asked the Transportation Bureau to start developing a program to start systematically addressing that beyond local improvement districts. The Bureau does a great job of working with property owners to form local improvement districts, but at the rate of progress that way, I think it's going to take about 300 years to build out that network. So
I think Commissioner
that's a
Fritz's
big
point
deal.
is well taken. I don't think that the intent of the report was to put neighborhoods in a position of being neglected because they're low-income neighborhoods. I think the thrust of that argument was to say that you should take care of existing problems before taking money to build new projects that might only benefit a small area of the city. And I think that was partly to address the idea that greater and greater portions of PBOT's budget is going to debt service for very specific projects. And really wanting to preserve as much money as possible to benefit the most people as possible, not to segregate a neighborhood.
Other questions or comments or requests of the City Club? We're being awfully demanding of you since you're volunteers. But the City Club plays such an important role. And again, this dialogue that we have here when you present reports, I think is really helpful to us, really helpful to the community in airing these issues. So we hope you're always willing to do this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. So this is not an action item. We don't have to take a vote on it, and we won't be taking testimony today on this, though obviously it's the 28th. I'm sorry. Hang on a minute, folks.
Waited 2 hours to testify.
Hang on.
Okay.
Hang on. Let me explain. This is a communications item. We have someone communicating to the council, just like we do at the beginning of each council meeting. So it wasn't my intention to take testimony today. There's no action before the city council today on this subject, but it's going to be on the 28th. Is that right?
The 27th.
27th. So we will be taking Commissioner Novick's proposal up on 27th. If you
need to have the opposition come and say something.
No, if you want to take up an argument with the City Club.
Here we go, the dictator.
If you want to have a debate, excuse me, if you want to have a debate with the City Club, go debate the City Club. It's their report. If you want to debate, excuse me, if you want to,
We should have a right to say something.
and you will.
Testimony.
You'll have a right to come speak on action when it's in front of the council.
Transparency.
You'll have a right to come speak on the council's action when the council's taking action. So we're going to move on to the next.
No!
We're going to move on to the next item, folks. Sorry, we're going to move on.
Leave your seats. Go away.
We're going to move on. So we're going to move on to the next item, which is number 8. Item number 8.
Number 8, recognize city employees for their tireless efforts in responding to significant record-breaking rain and flooding during the week of December 6, 2015.
Commissioner Novick.
Colleagues, the city was recently faced with a spectacular rainfall on December 7th that contributed to the wettest December on record. 3.32 inches of rain fell at the airport in the 24 hours ending at 2 p.m. on December 7th. That broke a previous record for 24 hours for December that was set in 1977. December 7th was the third wettest day in Portland history, 2.85 inches at the Portland airport. December became the all-time wettest month ever recorded in Portland with 15.24 inches of rainfall. And we set a December record for 25 consecutive days with measurable rainfall. City employees worked around the clock to keep our streets clear, our water supply safe, our river clean, and to keep our parks and communities safe. Our employees do excellent work every day, but during times of disaster like the ones we experienced recently, their work becomes even more important. Today, we take a minute to pause and thank all of our city employees for the work they do to keep city services functioning. This resolution is particularly timely because earlier this week, city employees again worked long hours to keep the city of Portland and its citizens safe, moving, and informed. I'm very proud of the work our employees do every day. I'm, of course, particularly proud of my bureaus, all of whom are involved, the PBOT maintenance crews who work tirelessly, and it's great to see PBOT maintenance folk here today. I'd ask you to stand up and be recognized.
Here, let's suspend the rules and thank our crews. Good work. Here, here.
Of course, Carmen Merlot and the Portland Bureau of Emergency Management coordinated the tar out of our efforts. Thank you, Carmen. And I'm sorry that Lisa and Laura left because, of course, the call takers and dispatchers at BOEC worked even harder than usual because, of course, they get lots and lots of calls during an event like this. So I'd like, and by the way, I heard frequently about how well coordinated all of our efforts were throughout the bureaus. And I'd actually like to take a second now to ask my fellow commissioners to talk about their bureaus and their work.
Steve, first, thanks for bringing this forward. Thanks to our dedicated public employees who provide great services 24/7, particularly during storms and times of stress. So we got some, and I want to thank you, Commissioner Novick, and Leah Treat and PBOT for the leadership role you played during the winter storms. I just want to take a moment to put it in context because we've been getting emails and inquiries from people asking, what was the volume, what was the magnitude, and how did the system work? And Steve Behrens is here and just gave me a quick update and a primer. So here's the context. In the fall, we have normal flows through our system of both stormwater and sewage of between 50 and 75 million gallons a day. And the system was designed to manage that, to take it off the streets, to take it, out of homes and businesses, get it to the wastewater facility, and hopefully prevent it from going in the river. On Halloween, we set a record this year. City of Portland set a record with in excess of a peak flow of over 300 million gallons. So when you think about that, that's roughly 6 times what the normal flow is that had to be accommodated through the big pipe and then through the wastewater facility. And then most important, we had to keep the bad stuff out of the river to be in compliance with our permits. And I think the BES team thought that was pretty remarkable, the peak that we hit on Halloween in this 100-year storm event. But it was subsequently exceeded by 50%. So we hit at the highest, we hit a 9 times above normal flow. And the peak flow within the past month hit 450 million gallons. And that's just unprecedented. I mean, that's why they call it a 100-year storm. There's no precedent for it. And here's just an observation that I think we can all be proud of. Going back 20-something years, Dan, how long have we been working on the big pipe? Back to Earl Blumenauer's days, Dan Salzman had a big hand in it. But the big pipe, which was about $1 billion, was designed to prevent what was a routine occurrence of 50, 60 times a year of raw sewage going into our rivers. Well, the big pipe worked. The combination of green infrastructure, which is all the work Mother Nature did, and we saw those bioswales throughout the city overflowing, combined with the big pipe, combined with other steps we've taken, managed a record flow. And there were a couple of instances where there were limited discharges into the river, which were consistent with our permit. So then it begs the other question that people have had, which is, why didn't you build a system to anticipate a 100-year storm and a flow of 450 million gallons? And the answer to that is that if we had presented that 20 years ago to the public, I think they would have rejected that recommendation because it would have resulted in the big pipe being at least 3 times more expensive. The big pipe covers about 95% of what we could anticipate at any given time would be the needs of our system. The big pipe was not designed to cover the 100-year storm. So at a 100-year storm event, there's going to occasionally be some discharges. So I just want to echo what Steve said, and by putting that context on it, just point out what a remarkable event we've just gone through, unprecedented. And the system worked, both the infrastructure part of the system, which was the pipes and the bioswales and all the other, and the wastewater facility. But that system doesn't work without the human infrastructure, without the talented people that at PBOT and BES and emergency and maintenance and everyone else who stepped up in parks during this unusual event. So I want to add my thanks to all the hardworking people that worked overtime to manage a 100-year event. We may not see it again in our lifetime, but the system worked, and the folks responsible for managing the system stepped up. And Steve, thank you again for your leadership.
Well, I'd certainly like to thank members of Portland Fire and Rescue for the outstanding job they do. They're always ready all the time, so they're always busy. And also the Portland Housing Bureau, which for the first time opened severe winter shelters under a sort of a non-winter scenario. It really wasn't that cold. There wasn't snow and ice on the ground, but yet water was everywhere. And so we realized we have to adopt a new criteria that responds to just inundation, storms like that, and that as it affects our opening of our severe winter shelters. But we adapted, and we will adapt in the future. So thank you to both of those bureaus.
And thank you to the Office of Office of Neighborhood Involvement and Portland Parks and Recreation, particularly Nicole Chiron in the Disability Program of the Office of Neighborhood Involvement, who partnered with local agencies to make sure the needs of people with disabilities for shelter and safety were addressed. Portland Parks staff responded to 59 tree emergencies. We opened Mount Scott Community Center as a temporary shelter for people impacted by the flooding. Our parks maintenance workers did incredibly wonderful work. The rangers were out in all weather, and our community centers provided safe, dry places for people to exercise, have fun, and get together when we were all feeling a bit drenched. So thank you very much to all of my staff.
Well, you know, when I try to describe city government to people that maybe aren't completely familiar with it, sometimes I use a little bit of shorthand, and I say we're a big blue-collar service organization with a little thin layer of administration and policy on top, and that would include us in terms of that thin layer. And I mean that as a description, but also as a compliment, because that's what we do. We go do real things like patrol the streets and take care of medical and fire emergencies and pave streets and fix pipes. So we are, regardless of the actual color of the collar, though firefighters wear blue collars, depending on which uniform they're wearing, police officers wear blue collars. Maintenance workers, Bureau maintenance folks are more inclined towards orange so people can see them and not run into them with their cars. But the point remains that we are out there doing real work that keeps the infrastructure of the city functioning under all conditions. And it needs to be noticed and appreciated, and that's why this resolution today is a good idea. So I'm glad that some of those workers are here. I'm glad, Commissioner Novick, that you put this together as a way for us to recognize and say thanks.
Steve, if I could, I neglected to also include a shout out to the Water Bureau team. And they did partner with PBOT in dealing with some of the landslides and some of the other logistical issues. They made sure that the water ran. And we have had some water main breaks with the cold weather in the last couple of weeks, but nothing unusual. So also many thanks to the team at the Water Bureau.
And that reminds me, too, that the Bureau of Development Services was very helpful in some parks landslides that we had, and I know on various other structural issues, so thank you to them.
Colleagues, I'd now like to ask everybody who played a role in responding to the recent storm to stand while I read the resolution. Whereas city employees exemplified extraordinary public service during the extensive rain and flooding that occurred the week of December 6th, 2015. And whereas the extent of the damage and flooding required the governor to declare a state of emergency that included Multnomah County. And whereas city employees worked long hours and under arduous conditions to keep the residents of Portland safe, moving, and informed. And whereas the Bureau of Emergency Communications answered over 3,000 calls per day on December 7th through 10th, almost 1,000 more calls per day than in previous years. And whereas the Bureau of Emergency Management quickly set up a unified command to coordinate a response from a number of agencies in the region. And whereas the Bureau of Transportation worked exhaustively to respond to 20 landslides, remove the equivalent of 80 dump trucks of debris, keep emergency response routes clear, and respond to twice the typical number of constituent calls. And whereas 2 Water Bureau crews assisted PBOT with closing streets impacted by landslides and flooding that could have impacted the water system. And whereas the Bureau of Emergency Services engineers, watershed managers, and operators managed the city's environmental services, managed the city's stormwater system to meet the unprecedented demands of the 100-year storm. And whereas Portland Fire and Rescue responded to 109 calls related to the severe weather, approximately a 15% increase from previous years. Calls for service included power lines down and arching, structure fires, flooded buildings, landslides, rollover accidents, and a tree that fell into a home and killed a resident. And whereas the disability program partnered with local agencies to coordinate communications, services, access, and functional needs for people with disabilities. And whereas Portland Parks and Recreation staff responded to 59 tree emergencies, provided assistance to homeowners in need, and worked to address landslides and other hazards to keep park users safe and protect park assets, including Pinnock Mansion and Forest Park. And whereas Portland Parks and Recreation staff worked with the Red Cross to open Mount Scott Community Center as a shelter for people impacted by the flooding and maintain community access to essential programs and services. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council declares the City of Portland employees to be the best city employees in the world.
Here, here. Thank you very much.
And may we suspend the rules?
We may. Thank you all. Great work.
We'd like to have everybody up so we can take some pictures.
Okay. Oh, we should see if there's any testimony and take a vote.
Oh, that's right. Sorry about that.
Anyone want to speak on this item? Okay, roll call, please.
Fritz.
Thank you, Commissioner Novak. Thank you to all of our city employees. I think everybody pulled together extraordinarily well, and as expected. We know how well we react both in good times and in normal times and in bad times. I want to also thank the staff at the Information and Referral Center, the 823-4000 number, who also had a hugely increased number of calls and, as usual, directed them all to the right places. Aye.
Fish.
Thanks to all our city employees for this, making this proud day possible. Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Novick.
Aye.
Hales.
Great work, and let's hope for a nice mild remainder of the winter so that you don't have to work quite those many hours under quite those same conditions again this year. Thank you very much. Aye. Okay, let's take that picture. Come on up.
I think we can all squeeze in.
Over here, over here.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on, please, to item number 19.
Authorize an intergovernmental agreement with law enforcement agencies for the use of the Police Bureau Training Complex.
Captain Parman is here to talk about this implementation of one of the very ideas behind building this training facility in the first place.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Brian Parman. I'm currently the captain of the training division at the Portland Police Bureau. So we're here today to present an ordinance, and just as a little bit of background, the facility opened in September of 2014, and so we spent a little over a year using the facility, working the bugs out as far as how we safely move people around the building. And during the entire time we've been open, and in fact, even prior to opening, we've had many, many requests from other agencies. They want to come and use the facility to train their members as well. We have had some limited usage by other city bureaus and by other outside agencies during the last year, but we really wanted to formalize our process, and so we've worked with the city attorney's office to develop an intergovernmental agreement that will allow us to make our facility available for use when the police bureau is not using it to train. And we've developed a fee structure that will aid in cost recovery, which will help to offset the operating costs for the facility.
So those fees, Captain, are designed to fully recover our incremental additional costs, right? So we're spreading the cost of the facility over more users.
Right, and in developing the fee structure, we worked with other comparable facilities here in the region. For example, we're not the only indoor range in the region, so the rates that we charge for our range are comparable to other facilities. And, we're trying to balance, full cost recovery against what other agencies can pay. We know firsthand, having spent decades renting facilities for our members, what a burden it can be. And so trying to balance access to a state-of-the-art training facility against it does cost us to keep the lights on.
Yeah. Commissioner Fritz?
That's a very noble willingness to share with other jurisdictions. However, the taxpayers of Portland spend $18 million to buy this facility. So just getting cost recovery for keeping the lights on for outside agencies doesn't seem to me to be the right policy in terms of the fees, and it's particularly because this IGA intergovernmental agreement sets the standard for all the other ones, and that you'll be authorized to go ahead and implement them without council's approval of the others. So I'm really concerned about only getting cost recovery rather than getting back some of the investment that Portland's taxpayers have made in this facility.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that point. And so, as I said, we're simply trying to balance what we think other agencies will pay. If our rate is substantially higher than another indoor range, then we won't see usage, and those dollars will go to other jurisdictions for their facilities and not ours.
Have you looked at what facilities we have that nobody else has? Because it's a really state-of-the-art facility.
Oh, absolutely. The area that what we offer that other facilities don't is our indoor scenario village, which is an area where we can do scenario-based training. And so we set a rate for that. I will point out that the rate structure is an appendix to the agreement and can be modified. It gives us the ability to alter the fee structure based on usage or based on how the market changes as the facility and the market continue to evolve.
So some of these, in looking at the fee schedule, some of these fees are basically, these other agencies use our facility, for example, the driving course. It's there, that $60 an hour doesn't include instructors or staff. That's just to use that part of the facility, right? That's a use fee.
Yeah, correct. It's just to make the facility available. When we have to staff the training, there is, at the very bottom, we have after-hours supervision. So if people train outside of our normal business hours, we are recouping the personnel cost associated with being there to provide access.
Yeah, okay. So some of this involves a small amount of wear and tear and just amortization of whether it's a mock weapon or a piece of asphalt.
Yes, exactly.
The scenario village is less expensive to rent than just a simple large classroom.
True.
Yeah, that is correct.
So if that's something that's special to us, that it's not like we're competing with anybody else, I'd just like you to go back, and as you said, you can, presumably the commissioner in charge can adjust the fee schedule comes back in the budget. I'd just like that to be a
I
consideration.
think you've raised some good points. I think my
Absolutely.
suggestion would be, we approve this, we give Captain Parman the green light to get going with this, and then see how we're doing. Like any business, if you will, we'll see how our demand is. And your point about more fully recovering the investment that our citizens have already made is that's a very reasonable position for us to take, not just operating costs, but some amortization of the investment that we made. Point taken, and I think none of us is interested in particularly subsidizing other agencies in using this facility. We want to make it available. We want to charge what the market will bear, but also a reasonable return. So, fair point, Commissioner. Thank you.
Yes,
I
thank
have
you.
a follow-up question on that, which is, Captain, how do you define the benefit to us as a city and a force of having sister agencies do some training in our facility? Because I'm guessing there's something in it for us as well beyond just cost recovery.
Well, I think there is, and the largest benefit I think that we see is it will only, outside usage will only improve the communication we have with these agencies. And several of these agencies exist within the boundaries of our city, the Port of Portland, Portland State, OHSU. And these are agencies that we would partner with to respond to large-scale events in their small areas of jurisdiction within our city, or even on our borders, you know, the event, say, like an active shooter in Clackamas County. And so to the extent we have had more time to interact with their staff, and we can all be operating off the same sheet of music, if you will only improve the metro area response to emergencies.
Yeah, and so we directly or indirectly benefit from that. Reminds me a
Absolutely.
little bit of an argument someone made when we were debating JTTF, where someone sort of turned some of the concerns upside down and said, yeah, but by having our officers working with the FBI, we'll have our eyes and ears in there and potentially raise the level of awareness around the issues we care about by participating. And reasonable people can agree or disagree with that argument, but it does seem to me that uniform training and communication with our regional partners has a benefit to us if they're doing it at our facility. So
I would
just
agree.
one thing to consider.
Thank you.
Other questions for Captain Parman? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone want to speak on this item? If not, then it's going to pass to second reading next week. Thank you. Okay, item 20.
Authorize a contract with the lowest responsive bidder for the construction of the Far North Nikolai Sewer Rehabilitation Project number E08401 for $4,090,000.
Mr. Fish.
Thank you. We welcome Scott Gibson and Brandon Wilson here today to present, and I'll just be very brief in my comments. Over 1/3 of Portland's 2,500 miles of sewer pipes are more than 80 years old. This ordinance would authorize a contract for one of the many upcoming projects to replace or repair aging sewer infrastructure. This continuing program protects water quality, public health, and the environment. The Far North Nikolai Sewer Rehabilitation Project would replace about 6,000 feet of sewer pipe that are either failing or are too small. And I'll turn it over to Scott. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Good morning. My name is Scott Gibson. I'm Principal Engineer with the Bureau of Environmental Services, and with me is Brandon Wilson, our Project Manager for this project. We're here requesting authorization for a construction contract, and I'll have Brandon tell you give you a short presentation about the project. It's a very challenging project, and we're here to answer any questions.
Good morning.
Morning.
Okay, well, a little bit of background about the project. The project was originally pre-designed through the Northwest Neighborhoods Combined Sewer Relief Program, and later updated in the systems plan from 2012. And as Scott mentioned, the project will relieve sewer backups and rehabilitate century-old pipe. The slide now shows a basic project location. It's bound by 23rd Avenue to the east, 31st Avenue to the west. North is Reed, and it goes all the way down to Upshur. Project goals and objectives. As you can see, it's been recommended already. Increasing capacity, rehabilitating poor condition pipes, Also mentioned, we have 6,000 mainline feet of upsize, open-cut pipework and about 2,000 linear feet of mainline cured-in-place trenchless rehabilitation along Vaughan. Public involvement for this project has been pretty extensive. There's been several mailings sent out through the project design life to the surrounding community, including businesses, industrial, commercial, residences, there's hotels. ODOT is also involved with the proximity to the I-405 off-ramp. And there's also an extensive noise review board process for the night work that we're proposing. And there's continued ongoing close coordination with residents concerning specific conditions and concerns. Just thought I'd mention one aspect of the design. Through that process of public involvement, and the feedback that we received, we were able to redesign the project. Instead of the pre-design showing open cut work, which would be night work and disruptive on Vaughan, we were able to have this flow transfer alternative, essentially transferring the bulk of the work north 1 block to Wilson, which is a less busy street, mostly an industrial neighborhood. And it should have a lot less impact on the public. As I mentioned here, greatly reduced project night work, traffic disruptions, related noise. The pipes on Vaughan will be rehabilitated with a trenchless method, as I had mentioned before, which still will have some night work at the intersections, but will be considerably less impact we anticipate. Next steps, we plan to advertise this project early 2016, possibly January or February. The confidence level is high for the estimate, and purchasing agent to report back to council with lowest responsible bid. We anticipate notice to proceed in early this summer, and the construction duration is 15 months. And that concludes the presentation, and we'd like to entertain any questions you might have.
Mayor and colleagues, let me just emphasize, in some ways, this is, just about the worst possible location to do a major sewer project. It's from time to time, I take that route to get over to Thurman to have breakfast at San Honore. It's already close to being a failed intersection. There's tremendous pressure when you get to 23rd. And we're talking about a major project going up Vaughan. So I, number one, want to just acknowledge that the location creates significant challenges. What I think is noteworthy about the approach proposed by BES is that they would do a bulk of the work at night, and they have figured out a way to go over one street and do some of the work there. But there's no sugarcoating the fact that there's businesses, residences, hotels, and other things, and a major intersection there. It just unfortunately also happens to be a sewer line. And so, we're caught between a rock and a hard place, but we invite your any suggestions or concerns that you might have.
It's a good solution for just those reasons. Other questions, concerns for the team? Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Anyone want to speak on this item? If not, then it will come back on second reading next week. Thank you. Okay, item 21.
Grant revocable permit to Tracktown Events LLC for street and lane closures needed for activities related to the 2016 World Indoor Track and Field Championships and USA Indoor Track and Field Championships.
Commissioner Novick.
Colleagues, we've got this big fat event coming up, which will require some street and lane closures. And fortunately, we have Greg Jones dropping in from his semi-retirement to tell us all about it.
Right.
The man we won't let go of.
Good morning, and I'll try to keep this brief. You've had a long morning. So with me today are Marlo Maroon, who is the transportation manager with Tracktown, Doug Oblitz, our project manager, Elizabeth Mahan, and Mark Haynes, our traffic engineer, if you have any questions. What this ordinance does is two things. It approves a series of lane and street closures and parking removal in the downtown area and the convention center area during the event period. Normally, this would be done administratively by PBOT, but given the profile of the event, We wanted the most transparency around it, so we're bringing it to council to do this as an ordinance. The grant is a revocable permit for specific street and lane closures in the downtown area. That would be Morrison from 4th to Broadway, Southwest 6th from Taylor to Morrison, the auto lane only, that's on the mall, and Southwest Broadway, the east lane from Alder to Yam Hill. These are all, as you might guess, right around Pioneer Square, which will be the hub of the event for downtown Portland, center of the Athletic Village area. We recognize these are significant closures. But we also have two other closures over on the convention center area. So it's the west side of the convention center, Southwest First, and Oregon, which leads underneath I-5 to Southwest First, and that'll be the staging area for emergency vehicles. We have been working with Tracktown for 9 months now to develop a transportation plan for the event, including shuttle buses, carpool systems, routes back and forth between downtown and the convention center area. And these closures are necessary in order to provide for quick movement from the hotels for the athletes to the shuttle buses and the carpools for the dignitaries to get them to and from the convention center during this event. These events are timed events. It's essential that the competitors are there at the right time. They don't miss their preliminaries and final heats. We have done extensive outreach over the last 2 months for the adjacent property owners and businesses. We've sent flyers out, and I can hand those out to you. We've connected with all of the adjacent property owners and businesses. We've met with the Portland Business Alliance. We have talked with ODOT, with Multnomah County, with the Portland Police Bureau, who we've worked carefully with. And generally, we have a plan here that I think will work. We're going to continue to work to try to mitigate to the degree possible the closures and impacts. But this is sort of the base for the permit right now.
So I have
some questions.
Sure.
We all got a copy of a letter the Portland Business Alliance sent to Leah Treat, which raises some concerns about impacts on businesses due to these closures. But I guess and also some other, what I thought are salient points, restrooms. So what are we doing in terms of providing additional restrooms for everybody that's going to be there?
Restrooms are a little out of my area of responsibility in transportation, but Tracktown has agreed to work with the Square Management Agency to determine what is the best way to accommodate restrooms in that area for the spectators as well as the participants. So they will be having restrooms in the VIP areas for the teams and for the dignitaries. We need to continue to work with the Square Management in terms of what additional facilities may be needed.
The other point they raise is using professional flaggers versus volunteers.
Right.
So I think that's a huge issue. I mean, you're going to have angry motorists.
Right.
And you don't want to have volunteers dealing with angry motorists
I
in the
think-
heart of downtown.
I think that was a
How's that gonna be
misunderstanding. I think that
resolved?
was a misunderstanding with the Business Alliance. We will require our standard requirements for street and lane closures, which require professional traffic management companies and professional flaggers at the major intersections. Tracktown will be supplementing that with volunteers to aid pedestrians and other people that are trying to get to the square or get to the hotels.
Finally, how many parking spaces in our Smart Park garages are we going to be
We're looking at
giving up to
about 40
VIPs?
About 40 spaces for the week in the Morrison garage, which has the capacity right now. It's they're all running close to their about 85% capacity, but in working with the Smart Park managers, they feel that there's going to be adequate room in that garage.
What's the precedent for closures of this scale? I mean, I know that we sometimes have large-scale events at Pioneer Courthouse Square, and the police create a buffer like the Christmas tree lighting event. Sometimes because of the number of people there, we temporarily close parts of Broadway or for safety reasons. Obviously, on weekends for sporting events, like we had that event on Broadway that was
Exactly, the Dew Festival event
Dew
last
Festival.
summer, right.
And that was closed on up, but it was on a weekend. And I mean, we have occasionally parades and things. When have we done something of this magnitude that falls on workdays?
This is probably the largest event downtown where we've had a closure of this magnitude. But we've had similar types of closures, the Major League Soccer event a couple years ago, the Dew Festival. We've had runs and other activities that generally are on weekends, though.
With the MLS event, which I'm intimately familiar with, we did close a East-West Street to get people from Director Park to the stadium, but it was narrowly framed, and a lot of work went into picking that route.
Right.
It was not a prominent route like Broadway, and we're talking about on multiple days where there's rush hour and commuting. So, have other alternatives been explored that are short of closing Broadway to northbound traffic for such an
Clarification first. The closure on Broadway is only the east lane. It is not the entire street. And that is primarily for loading and unloading activities at the square. So buses and trucks will be queuing up as they approach the square to load and unload. We are going to continue to look at possibly being able to mitigate that, open these closures at night, and potentially look at during rush hour. But we still need to do a little bit more work on that.
So what's the arrangement under our policy for any of the foregone revenue for parking revenue, either on street or elsewhere?
Right.
How does that get covered?
So this is fully cost recoverable back to the Bureau, and it will come out of the general fund grant that was given to Tracktown this fall. And those costs that the Bureau incurs will come back to the Bureau out of that general fund allocation.
So it's part of the 1-point-something million that we
That's right.
allocated?
Yes.
And I mean, the city is, in my judgment, there's nary a request that Tracktown has made that we haven't in good faith tried to meet. Although sometimes I think it falls under the heading of no good deed goes unpunished. On this, have we considered alternatives so that we wouldn't have to do as much disruption in this area?
We've extensively modeled and looked at ways to move the athletes and the dignitaries from this area.
Let's take the dignitaries out of it, because I'm less concerned about
Okay.
quote-unquote dignitaries. Athletes getting to start times and things, I think. But we're an informal city. We don't normally move mountains for the dignitaries. We let people rough it a little bit. But if there's some compelling need to get athletes to a place safely, have we considered alternatives?
Yes, we have. We went through a long series of exercises to try and find out what the best routing would be and what the minimal disruption would be.
And this is your best recommendation?
And this is our best recommendation.
And does this take into account the wonderful light rail system, which to me is the most reliable and the most comfortable way of getting from Pioneer Square to the convention center?
Yes, we've had long discussions with TriMet, and they each
Stuff in the cars and letting them use all
a transit pass as a part of their accreditation, so they will be able to use the light rail system to move back and forth. But we need to recognize that many of these athletes are coming from overseas, and many of them are non-English speaking athletes. And then these types of events, they're accustomed to having a shuttle bus pick them up at their hotel and take them to the event. Now, we're hoping that they will take advantage of their transit pass, amount of closure and restrictions that we need to apply. But we can't guarantee that at this point, and we need to system. And that may reduce, we need to certify to the international body that we've provided the contractual, we've met the contractual requirement for the transportation system.
A lot of them probably come from countries with better transit systems than ours, so they're probably quite used to riding transit.
And we have over 80 mutual assistance associations in Portland of people in the immigrant and refugee communities who might be asked through the New Portlanders program to be ambassadors and help in their native language, tell people the MAX is really a great way to get from A to B.
Absolutely. We are going to do extensive outreach to the entire athlete team community to encourage them to use the transit system. And we've been working with TriMet. They've been a part of our committee for the last 9 months.
I assume
to work out those details.
The stopping point here for you and for Tracktown, I assume, is that the IAAF has certain expectations that go with a venue regardless of the presence of
Regardless of the fact that
Exactly.
it's actually not the best way to get from A to B.
Right. So we have to meet those contractual obligations, and with the hope that the athletes will choose to use the transit
And
system.
by the way, if we have a disagreement with the governing body, we resolve this through arbitration at The Hague? Is that how it
I
works?
believe so. You may have to talk to the French financial police as well.
But by the way, since you're recommending this as the least intrusive alternative, so the essential bus service, the essential MAX service, and any accessible services that we run downtown so that people can get around, none of those will be impacted by this proposal?
That's right. All of the normal transit services will be available. And we'll provide vehicle passes for the federal courthouse so that the judges and their staff can get to the Pioneer Square Courthouse without any disruption at all. Tracktown's also working with the Nines Hotel to provide continued valet service at their front.
Mayor, this is going to create enormous havoc downtown, since we're talking about lots of people, lots of competing uses, lots of public safety issues. We have a proud tradition in the city of not having police officers or other sworn personnel do traffic management for some reason, but most other cities you go to where there's significant public safety issues, there is someone in uniform. And I hope on this one we can make sure that we have the right people in those choke points handling public safety, because there's going to be significant conflicts.
Yeah.
Could I just draw your attention to the Business Alliance letter? And let's reframe that in terms of it's going to be an extremely vibrant event at which a lot of people are going to want to be downtown, and we want to make sure that
They're safe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, and I think, obviously, Diana Nunez is here, is coordinating this in my office. Doug Obis is here. There's, all the bureaus are involved. I mean, today we're talking about street closure, but the police bureau and every other bureau that has any skin in this game is involved. So, point taken about trying to make sure it works. Right?
So I guess I'd like to have somebody, I think this, as Greg said, this is beyond your expertise. I want to have somebody from Tracktown talk about restrooms for the
Actually,
general public.
I have a comment on the restrooms. My understanding is that the Pioneer Courthouse Square doesn't allow additional porta potties for any event there. So I would suggest that we look at solutions such as for the Rose Parade, such as we had for the MLS Final, the Portland Marathon, where we have porta potties available at other places than Pioneer Courthouse Square.
Yeah, I just want to hear that it's being thought about beyond VIPs and dignitaries.
Right. I think Doug probably.
Doug's
would be-
here, so Doug, can we put you on the
Right
spot
person.
about this and other issues?
Morning, Doug
morning.
Oblitz with Tracktown. Nice to see you again, Mayor. It's been a while.
Yeah, we were there checking out the new track last night. It's amazing.
So the event at Pioneer Square is being carefully constructed with the experienced staff at Pioneer Square, Jen Pulver and her staff. And we're going to continue to work on the restroom plan, but we already have access to what I've been told is the busiest restroom in the city of Portland. That's the one inside the square. So typically for Pioneer Square events, that's the main source. We are supplementing, as Greg mentioned, with some additional porta potties on the activation area itself. And we're happy to work with Pioneer Square and Parks and other agencies if we want to put porta potties elsewhere in the vicinity.
I would say put porta potties elsewhere in the vicinity.
Okay.
Okay.
One person's opinion.
Other questions? And I have, someone provided me a hand annotated version of the Portland Business Alliance letter, in which it sounds like a lot of these requests that they've made are being agreed to, or at least in part. So there's continuing dialogue about their concerns here, but with you and the others involved in at
That's
both
correct.
the Bureau and elsewhere. So
I spoke with the Business Alliance this morning, and I committed to getting them a response back next week before the final vote on this item.
okay, good. Might be helpful if you could share that with the council.
We will.
In some format, maybe a little more formal than this. Okay, other questions for Greg or Doug? Thank you both very much. Anyone want to speak on this item? Anyone else want to speak on this item? Come on up. Hello again.
Good morning. I'm Charles Johnson for the record, and I just want to primarily congratulate Commissioner Schultzman on his enthusiasm for the issue of safe, clean, sanitary places for people of Portland to perform their bodily functions. It's actually not just an issue for during Tracktown time. It's something we actually need to be mindful of all the time as we deal with our houseless situation and the many people that sleep along 5th and 6th Avenue. That's right. I said the streets that we're closing are people's homes. People sleep on 5th Avenue here just like they do in New York City. I know that we have a shelter coming, but back to this issue of the athletic event. There's really, I thought I have seen fenced in, paid to get to porta potties in Pioneer Square. So I'm sure that in that vicinity, especially for closing a lane of traffic, that seems like a beautiful place to put public services, is in a public street that's been closed to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions about this? Then this is a non-emergency ordinance that passes to second reading, and Greg will get those responses back to the council. Thank you. Item 22.
Authorize the Bureau of Transportation to acquire certain permanent and temporary rights necessary for construction of the Northeast Gleason Street and Northeast 90th Avenue Bridge Replacement Project through the exercise of the city's eminent domain authority.
Second reading, roll call.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Novick.
Aye.
Hales.
Aye. And we're recessed till 2 p.m.